Hi everyone, this is uh, take 5, I think, of my presentation. I'm using a software called, what is it called? It's called QuickTime Player to make this presentation, and I've had to do this in my own college classes, and it's always a little weird every time. So I hope that you'll be patient with me. Um, but anyway, to start, this is a presentation for MLA formatting and citation. Okay, so I am using a PowerPoint from West LA College that you can easily find on the internet, but that I will also send to you. As you can see here, there are 33 slides. We're not going to go through every single one of them. We're going to discuss MLA citation in greater detail, I think, next week when you are working on your research papers. Today we're just going to go over a few main things to get you started. So I think that this presentation will focus primarily on formatting and not citation itself. Okay, so to start, it may be helpful to remember that MLA stands for Modern Language Association. This is something that we've talked about before. Um, think of MLA as a kind of association, right? It's sort of like a club, if you will, in which academics, scholars, professors, people who work within the humanities, right? So fields like English, history, philosophy, etc., get together for an annual conference. And one of the things that they decide is, or the association decides, there's probably a committee that does this within the association, is how research papers and projects are to be conducted, right? And the reason we cite things whenever we are writing research papers is this idea of um, let's call it authorial attribution, right? So for you guys, it's sort of like recall the conversation we had about language and about discourse and becoming scholars, right? Learning who we are as um, thinkers and intellectuals. So, citation is really contains a two folded purpose, right? One, it allows us to, um, so like I said, one, participate in the discourse, right? Well, actually, sorry. Let's start with one. It allows us to give acknowledgement to the thinkers, to the writers, to the texts from which we have developed our own ideas, right? And I think the idea is that the subtext is that your ideas belong to a bigger discourse, right? A bigger conversation on race or politics or gender and sexuality, bigger than the context of your paper, right? So citation does that, number one. And number two is that it also like recognizes and honors the ideas of others, right? And so I think implicit in this process of citation is we are saying, ideas matter, original ideas matter, and those and people need to have credit for them. So one day, perhaps you will become a scholar, perhaps you will get your work published, and there will be an undergraduate student who will be referencing your work in research papers. Okay, so let's start. Let me do a new document because, like I said, this is take 5. Okay, so I've created a new Word document, and I believe that my version of Word is from 2011. I'm also using Microsoft Word on a Mac, so things are going to be a little different as far as where they can be found, but the buttons and the tools will generally be the same. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. Okay, so Remember when, remember that when your teacher is asking you to write things in MLA format, they're generally asking you to write in Times New Roman font, right? 12-point size, 1-inch margins. There's one other thing. Oh, yes, and double-spaced, right? Now, you may have found that in high school, when your English teachers were giving you tutorials on MLA citation formatting, that there was a lot of inconsistency, right? Part of the reason for this is that MLA citation and format gets changed every year. Or maybe not every year, but every so often, right? And so the citation style is, updated or modified. And so the confusion may be, or the origin of the confusion or the inconsistency may be that many of your teachers may be using an older version of MLA citation. The other thing is that MLA citation is actually very nuanced. So for example, you could buy a handbook on MLA and other types of citation, and you'll find that the editors have been very, very specific as to how to cite certain things. I know that a handful of you, or maybe most of you, like to rely on sources or websites that do your citation for you. I think that you should avoid those websites, because remember, as we said, you guys are smarter than your computers and you're smarter than your calculators, right? So there needs to be a thinking human behind this referencing process. So I know it seems kind of tough at first, but once we get a few of these things down, I promise that it'll be much easier. The other thing is, I know that this may be a review for a lot of you guys, so feel free to fast forward or do something else, as you find a section of this presentation that's a little more suitable for your needs, okay? All right, so I have this new document open. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my file, okay? So I'm going to File, Save As, and we're going to follow the format that I asked you to follow from your prompt, okay? So I'm going to call it Christine Trung _ reaction paper. So I'm going to save it onto my desktop. Save, okay? So remember to save your paper often, because this has happened to me and many students I know, is that you just lose all of your work because your computer runs out of battery, there's an electrical outage, right? And so if you're using a Mac, continually, press Command S, right? The shortcut for save, or if you're on a PC, Control S, okay? All right, so we have this new Word document open. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Format, Paragraph, and we're going to make sure that we don't add space between paragraphs of the same style, okay? Now, the reason for this is, if you don't check that box, then formatting just gets very tricky at the very end. And we want to make sure that we're handing in a paper that looks polished, right? That has a nice presentation. Professors and your teachers will mark off points for improper or poorly formatting. So let's make sure that before they even read your papers, you have a well-polished and presentable piece of work. Okay, so let's do that. Let's change our font. We're going to go to Times New Roman. Okay, and here it's already 12. All right, so I'll delete this because we're done. Now we want to make sure that we have 1-inch margins all across, okay? So now your margins are the parts of the paper where text doesn't appear. So it's basically like this area, right? Right here. This is your top margin, your left margin's here, your right margin's here, and here's your bottom margin, okay? So to do that, let's go back to Format, Document, and let's make sure that all of these margins say 1. Okay, so notice how the left and the right margins are at 1.25. So let's make sure they all say 1. Okay, see how that changes a little bit? Okay, now I know that a lot of you guys like to double space your work right away. I'm going to advise against that. Maybe you've already heard, maybe we've already had this conversation, but, oh, let's make this times again. Yeah, so the reason for that is if you double space your writing first, then the tendency in my experience is to write to meet a certain page limit or to meet a certain word count. And so you don't want to write just to meet some kind of arbitrary goal. You want to write to be able to develop your ideas, right? And to showcase substantial ideas. Hold on just a second. BRB, take a bathroom break. Okay, are we back? Okay, good. I guess that wasn't really long enough for a bathroom break. Anyway, long story short, keep your writing single-spaced, okay? Okay, so the next thing you'll want to do is add a header, right? And a heading, right? So here's your header. Your header is this space here. So if you want to, just for future reference, if you want to write something in your header, just double click in this space, okay? All right, now to add a page number, let's go to Insert, Page Number. We're going to position our page number top of page, right alignment, okay? Go to OK, and so there's our number there for us. Now remember that in MLA format, you want to type your last name. Okay, so I'll type mine. And notice that the font here is not the font we want. So let's make sure our font is consistent. So I've highlighted everything in this box, and I'm going to make it Times New Roman. Okay? All right, so you can close your header by clicking here, right, close, or you can click outside of the header twice. Okay, now you'll notice that as soon as I go to the next page, the page number will have been automatically inserted for me, right? And so this will be the case ad infinitum. So you shouldn't be manually inserting the page number. Okay? Make sure that this looks proper. This is properly formatted, so there should be a space between your last name and the page number. Okay. Let's work on our heading. Okay. Now you may already know that in MLA format, there's a very specific way to start your papers. So that format is first name, last name, instructor's name, course title, and date. Okay. So it should look like this. Here's an example. Whose name should I use? Let's use, see. Excuse me. Jose's name? Okay, Jose. So Jose Lucindas. Okay, instructor's name. That's me. Right, Christine Trung. Right, or I'm not really a professor, but if your professor last name, right, something like this. The course title, you can call this Summer Intensive English. That's good enough for now, right? In your classes, when you're writing papers, you may put something like English 102, right? So you have the prefix of the course here and the course number. So you may do something like that. Like I said, we're just going to call it Summer Intensive English, right? And the date is also formatted in a particular way. We're going to start with the date, which is the 7th, the month, and the year, right? One of the things I used to like to do when I was a student was I liked to put the due date here, okay? Not the date that I actually worked on the paper. Okay, so we'll keep this at the top. Okay, so after the date, we're going to hit enter once, okay? And we're going to do center align, right? And we're going to type our title. So notice that we've only entered once, right? We didn't enter 2 or 3 times, okay? Just once, okay? Also notice that we use the center align button as opposed to using the space bar to bring us to the center of the page, right? As opposed to using the tab key to bring us to the center of the page, we're going to use the center align button. So center align, title, okay? So this is just a stand-in title. I hope that you will not name your paper's titles. You should choose a title that is appropriate to your paper and that relates to your thesis, right? Your paper's main argument. Okay. Also note that the title here is the same size and font as the rest of the text. It's neither bolded nor italicized nor underlined, like I said, larger than the other text. Okay. All right. So after we type our title, we're going to enter one more time and we're going to go to left align. Okay, so we're back here at the far left side of the page. Let's talk about indentations. Okay, so I know that there are some teachers who ask you to indent by pressing the space bar 3 times. Okay, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to use the tab key to indent. So press the tab key, right? And notice that the indentation here is the width of the indentation is much longer than the width of the indentation here, right? So a part of Microsoft Word's default settings is that the indentation is automatically set to 1/2 inch. That is also the formatting style for MLA, okay? So we're going to use the formatting, we're going to use the tab key, okay? All right. So like I said, I don't know, actually, maybe I didn't say this, but maybe I know that many of you don't have Microsoft Word, the software, at home, and that you use Google Docs, right? So let's just go over this very quickly. Let's do a new document. Okay, first give your doc a title. Okay, so first let's change our font. Remember, Times New Roman 12. Okay, let's make sure that our spacing is single. Go to Format, line spacing, single, right? So Google Docs default setting is to set line spacing at 1.15. We want single. Okay. Now let's also make sure that our pages are at 1 inch margin. So again, format, file, page setup. Okay, so we're all good. Let's insert our page number. So insert page number. We're going to position it upper right hand corner. Okay. Last name. Okay. Remember, space between the last name and the number, and still times 12. Okay, good. So we're going to do our header again. I'm just going to copy and paste this over to save time. Okay. Remember, center align, title, enter, tab key to indent. This is my first sentence. Okay. All right, good. Let's go over a few MLA citation stuff. Okay, so it's very important to note that we always attribute our sources, right? This means that if you are using ideas and material that is not your own, you must attribute it to some source, right? So it doesn't matter if you are summarizing, paraphrasing, or quoting, you must provide the source, okay? Okay, let's go over a few things I'm just going to make a few notes here so I don't forget. So we're going to talk about quotations, single, double quotes. We're going to talk about in-text citations, also known as parenthetical citation, works cited. Okay. Okay, like I said, this is not going to be a very detailed presentation, although I know that it's already getting a little long. But okay, let's just get started. So very quickly, I want to make sure that everybody understands. So this button here means bolded, right? This is what bolded text looks like. Okay, this is what italicized text looks like, and this is what underlined text looks like. Okay, all right. Now, very quickly, we almost never, ever bold text. So I'm just going to erase that one. Okay, and we almost never underline text either in MLA format. We usually italicize things, okay? So we italicize, you'll get a handout, but we mostly italicize titles of books, movies, publications. So I'd like to express this as large, like the larger thing, right? Let's say, for example, the New York Times, okay? Or, I don't know, of mice and men. Okay? Now, if it's something like within the larger work, right, so like an article from the New York Times, then we use double quotation marks. Okay, or for example, if it's like a track within an album, then we also use quotation marks, right? So for example, an album, what's an album's name? I don't know. Spice Girls? Okay, and we're talking about the song Wannabe. That's not, I don't know, it's not a real song, I just made that up. I mean, it's kind of a real song, but not like that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So there are two parts to MLA citation, right? There's the in-text or parenthetical citation, right? So parenthetical means parentheses, and there's a works cited page. Okay, let's talk about parenthetical citation. Let's say you were talking about a book, right? So remember that the first time you reference a text, you reference the author's full name and the text, the full name of the text. Okay, so let's find, I'm just going to find an example. Okay, after BRB, let's take a bathroom break. 5 minutes, I'll be right back. Okay, thanks for waiting. Hope you took a bathroom break. What were we talking about? Oh, yes. In-text citation. Okay. All right, so the first time you reference a text, mention the author's full name, right? So I'm going to use a novel here. Alberto Moravia writes in the novel, the conformist that throughout his childhood, Marcelo was fascinated by objects as a magpie. Okay. So notice that the title of the publication is italicized, and I've included the author's full name. Okay. Notice also here that I've used double quotation marks. After your closing quotation marks, space one time and put in parentheses the page number. Okay, so that was on page 3. So part of the reason I didn't include the author's last name in my parenthetical citation, part of the reason I didn't, for example, do this, is because the author's last name has already been mentioned in this signal phrase, right? But let's say, for example, that I do something like this. The novel discusses the protagonist's fascination with objects, right? So here I'm using an indirect quote, right? And I want to indicate where I got this quote from. I'm going to use the author's last name here. So Moravia 3, okay? Period. So notice that there's a space here, there's one space here, and that the period goes after closing parenthesis. Okay. So one of the things I notice when I look at your writing is that sometimes the quotation marks are a little off. So sometimes they don't open and close, right? See how they open and close here? And sometimes you're using single quotation marks when you should be using double quotation marks and vice versa. So we use single quotation marks when we are when there's like a quote within a quote. So for example, let's say that in the novel there's a part of dialogue and it's something like this. Bobby says, "Hi, nice to meet you." Right? And we want to quote this whole thing, right? Which is the author's text. But we also want to quote this part, which is technically Bobby's quote, right? So we would say something like this. Moravia writes, Bobby says, remember double quotes here, says, and then we're going to use single quotes to indicate that this is a quote within a quote, saying, "Hi, nice to meet you," right? No period yet because we're going to punctuate at the end of our sentence. Nice to meet you. Single quote to indicate the end of what Bobby says, and then double quotes to indicate the end of Moravia's text, right? So we're going to close this, and then we're going to do our parenthetical citation. We've already mentioned the author's name here, so we're just going to type A3, right? And then period. Let's see. Now, sometimes it is the case that you are using multiple works from the same author, right? So if that is the case, then we may want to reference the text in our parenthetical citation. So let's say we are talking about this author and we're using the novel The Conformist, but I don't know what his other novels are. Let's just say, oh, Boredom, that's one. So we might say something like, this is from The Conformist 3. Okay? Okay, so there's that. Let's see, what else should I mention about this? Oh, now if you are, if the text in the book carries over, then you can also type a page range, right? So perhaps this carries over to the next page, 3 to 4. Okay. Remember that whenever you're using quotation marks, especially double quotation marks, punctuation typically goes before. Like if you're ending a sentence, it goes before. So let me just give you an example. So for example, Bobby says, again, hi, nice to meet you. The period goes before the quotation marks. It shouldn't look like this, right? So this is a little tricky, and this is something that it differs from different citation styles, and it differs from country to country, right? So hold on just a second. So it is the British convention to do this, right? Just like it is the British convention to spell color this way, right? But we're not going to do this. We're going to put the period before. Yeah, I think that's it for that part. Okay. So remember, if you are not doing parenthetical citation, then the name of the author and the name of the publication must be present in the sentence, right? So let's say, for example, that we're talking about an article from the New York Times, right? So I'm going to use this article. I'm just going to copy and paste this over. So I think I've mentioned this earlier. I don't remember if I did here or in another take, but it's much easier to simply create a works cited page yourself as opposed to using one of those automated ones, right? So this is the article from the New York Times. Okay, so remember that the big thing is italicized and the smaller thing is placed in quotation marks. Okay. All right, so let's say that I'm quoting from this article and I can't use parenthetical citation, right? There aren't any, I'm sorry, I can't use page numbers. These are the authors, but I'm just going to copy and paste so that we have that information here. So I may say, so the first time I reference the text, I'm going to say, according to Alan K. Jennifer from the New York Times in an article, just going to copy and paste this. Okay, remember punctuation goes before closing quotation marks. Trump has said, yada yada. Okay, so remember that in this case I don't need to do parenthetical citation because the source is already here. I already know where to look, right? But let's say that I'm just writing a different sentence and I say something like, the authors claim that Trump is, I don't know, let's look at the article, that Trump huddled with Mr. Cruz, right? Then I'll start with, and in this case I'm going to use the author's last names. Hold on just a second. Hi Nady, this is Christine. Christine? Hold on just a second. So, sorry, say that again?
But
Did you get that?
the reason they didn't call completion at 10 times was because
Transfer? What's the extension number?
the reason they didn't completely follow at 10 times
2310.
was because one,
So transfer 2310, then hang up.
I don't know how we could do that.
Okie dokie. Okay, so in this case, I'll have to confirm, but what you do actually is you refer to the author. Yeah, so you refer to the author's names. Okay, I don't know in which order and if you have to reference all of them. Okay, so I'm just going to say author's names, we'll confirm. Okay, let's say you're using a website and it doesn't have an author. So in that case, you will give the title of the web page, okay? Okay, that was a lot. Let's go very quickly to our works cited page, and then we will start wrapping up. Okay? All right, so remember that your works cited page is a part of your paper, right? So it should have a number at the top too. So I'm at the very top of my works cited page. Again, we're going to go to center align. I'm going to type works cited, enter, left align. Okay. Now remember that the general format for a book is going to be last name, first name, title of book, italicized, publication city, publisher, year of publication, and then your publication media. Okay, so you'll find with books, you'll find all of this information like within the first few pages of the book. You're going to find it on the copyright page, right? And so that information just for this book, for the MLA handbook, let's see, can I do a preview? Let's see. Okay, let's look at a book we can preview. Okay, look inside. So got the copyright page. Oh no, we don't have it. Oh, okay, here you go. So it's going to be here. Okay, so let me give you an example. There should be an indentation here. Okay, so let's do Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. So last name, Pollan, Michael, okay, period, italicized The Omnivore's Dilemma, okay. It was published by Penguins Group in New York City. So New York City, Penguins Group. Publication year was 2006, and it was a print media. Okay. Okay, let's do another. Let's do this one, boredom. Okay, so this is, what's this guy think? Oh yeah, Moravia, Alberto, period. Okay, boredom, oops, boredom, period. This is also published by, so this is published by NYRB, New York Review Books, in New York City as well, see? So New York City, how did I say this was? New York Review Books. Copyright date is 1960. Yeah, let's say 1960. And again, this is print. Remember that when you are creating your works cited page, that it's in alphabetical order. Okay, so P goes after M. We're going to put him up here, and there's an indentation here. Okay, let's talk about news articles because that's what you'll be using for this paper. Okay, so I'm going to use the same New York Times article. Okay, so it gets a little tricky with online sources. Okay, just a second. Sorry, just a second. Okay. So it's still very similar. Okay, so again, indent, last name, first name, title of article, in quotes, okay, period, closing quotation marks, publication, which is New York Times, okay, the date of the, the publication. So this was published on July 7th. So I'm going to write 7 July 2016, right? And then we're going to put the medium. Oops, I messed up a little bit, sorry. Publication, published date, medium, accessed date. Okay, so in this case, we're going to do, what is this, guys, with the long names? Okay, so we're going to start with the order in which the names were listed. We're going to start with Rappaport. And so remember, we're going to do first name, last name, but if you have like 3 names, we're just going to start with first names after the first name has been listed. So Jennifer Steinhauer and Maggie Haberman, period. Title is Trump holds. Okay, I'm just going to copy and paste it over. So I know that you guys do a lot of copying and pasting. If you do, just make sure that you change the formatting. Okay. Okay, and this shouldn't be italicized. Okay, period. This is from the New York Times. This is published 7 July 2016. This was on the web, and we accessed it the same day. Okay, that's all there is to it for this part. So let me just put it all together. Okay, so my works cited page is in alphabetical order. Okay, so I'm going to double space it to show you guys what it should look like. Paragraph. So to double space, if you don't know, let's go to Format, Paragraph. We're going to double space. Okay, should look like this. Okay, that is the end of my presentation. Hope that wasn't too